Welcome back to a chapter a day. Happy Sabbath. Today I will be reviewing the book of Ezra. Could you imagine that? We just started it, what, a week ago? 2 weeks? So, we had 10 chapters, and it's a short review, so this will not be a long reading before we go into the second half of. Now, it's said that the next book coming up, which is the book of Nehemiah, is also written by Ezra, or someone who is very close to Ezra. So we may hear some repetitions of what took place in Ezra, but we already know some of the things that we can expect. So let me start with chapter 1. Began with the reign of King Cyrus, and he gave a decree to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. Now, he said that he was given this instruction by God, the God. So as I said, God can use anyone to promote his work. God is no respecter of persons, okay? So he asked for people, that's King Cyrus, for people to return to Judah and Israel, and instructed that goods and materials be given to them in the rebuilding of this temple. Then we had some people who volunteered, which were mainly chiefs of the tribes and the priests and the Levites. They stepped forward to go because, of course, the work of the temple was, how should I say it was given to them from since Moses' time, when God said the Levites and Aaron's sons, that lineage of priests, they were to have no other jobs but to officiate in the temple. The king also instructed that all of the vessels that were taken away by King Nebuchadnezzar some time before, when he carried the children of Israel captive. Now, the children of Israel are in Babylon. Okay, this is not happening in Judah or Israel. This is in Babylon, where they were taken captive because they were being punished by God. God had stepped away and let them be taken captive because they kept turning away from God and committing idolatry and committing whatever sins the heathens were doing. So God said, you know what? I'm going to leave you up to the heathens. And the heathens came and took them away captive. And this is where now Cyrus is asking, Cyrus, king of Persia, is asking for them to go back to Jerusalem. And this is the hand of God working to have the children of Israel go back to Judah and Jerusalem. Okay, so so the people returned to the cities, whichever cities they came from in Israel and Jerusalem, and they began to build. They also offered sacrifices and offerings in celebration and thanks to God for this opportunity, for his mercies. Even, and I would tell you, and if anyone is truthfully walking with God, even after we see calamities in our lives, we know how merciful God still is, because we know the parts that we play in our own lives, the hardships we bring on ourselves sometimes by our poor choices. Okay, so they gave offerings, they gave thanks, they gave praise, they had a big celebration, praising God for his mercies and goodness. But then, like usual, there are some people who just don't like to see you prosper and move ahead. Okay, so these were the opposers of the rebuilding of the temple. And they tried to come in and join the children of Israel first when they came back to start rebuilding. But the children of Israel said, y'all have nothing to do with this. This is only for believers. And sometimes, you know what? You have to tell the world, to the people of the world, you know what? You leave that alone. You know, I would say Christianity is one of the most talked down religions in the world. People will barely choose, they're afraid to say anything about Islam. They don't want to talk about, they just leave Hinduism alone. And you know the devil is behind it. Anything good is never going to be left alone because the devil hates good. So when you see that your life is being attacked, don't feel badly. You know for sure that it is the devil who is hating what you're doing and he's trying to cut you down or stop it. So this here is no difference. So what they did is when they couldn't join them, they decided to beat them. So they sent letters to certain kings. Now, the rebuilding of this temple didn't just happen all at once. It was over a period of time, and I don't know for how long, but I'm thinking it's over decades, maybe even up to 70 years. But the first king, Ahasuerus, and then Artaxerxes. So These people were just planning an insurrection, and they sent that letter to tell King Artaxerxes, these people are planning an insurrection. That's the people of Israel or Judah who were rebuilding the temple, and that they have a history of doing so. And if he allows them to continue, they will stop paying tribute and stop recognizing his authority. So he needs to stop the work. So when King Artaxerxes read, he found that there was a history of the children of Judah or Israel that had resisted the king's authority in prior times, and he decided to go along with these opposers and stop the work. But then God sent some prophets, I think it was Haggai and Zechariah, to talk to the people, and that kind of gave encouragement to some bold men to rise up and say, you know what, we're going to continue this work despite what. So backed by the prophets and God, of course, God chiefly, through the prophets, they decided to continue the work of building the temple. So I don't know for how long it had stopped after the first decree by Artaxerxes to stop the work. I don't know how much time passed. But then the chiefs, when they saw that the work continue again, they came back. So I don't know what's the time lapse. They came back again, some more opposers, asking them again who gave them authority to go on with the building of the temple. And they said, you know what? We are under instruction by God. He told us to do it, and we also had a decree from King Cyrus time before giving us that authority. And we are going to continue with the building. So when these men saw their boldness, they said, well, let's send a letter to this king who was Darius at the time. So this is the third king since Cyrus. Okay, or I should say the fourth king, because it was Cyrus, Ahasuerus, Artaxerxes, now Darius. So they sent a letter to King Darius saying, you know what, maybe you need to check and see if there is really such a decree made by Cyrus that gave these Israelites or Jews the instructions to rebuild their temple, because here they go again building, and they say that's where they got the authority. So when it was researched, it was found, yes, it was true. King Cyrus did give them the authority and the go ahead to rebuild, and also Darius gave more instructions that they were not to be stopped, they were not to be bothered. Anybody threatening to bother them or trying to stop the work was to be hanged on his own doorpost. And they were supposed to be given more materials, gold, silver, everything that came out of the temple previously from Nebuchadnezzar when they were taken captive was supposed to restore to them in the building of the temple. So the people were able, the Israelites, the Jews were able to continue and complete the work of the temple undisturbed. Now Ezra comes into the picture. We get Ezra in chapter 7. He's being introduced as from the lineage of Aaron. He was from the priestly lineage, and he was sent now by King Artaxerxes. So I guess they go back and forth, back and forth. So Ezra was during the time of King Artaxerxes, and he was also a captive in Babylon, but he got a letter from the king that entrusted his mission to go back to Judah. So I'm thinking Ezra was taking place before this letter from King Darius. So he was already there, and he maybe had seen what was going on previously, but he had gone back with the captives, okay, since Artaxerxes. But when he got back, he also took some priests and Levites with him, and he got permission from the king to assist in the rebuilding of the temple, as well as he gave him vessels of silver and gold, etc. But when he got there to Jerusalem at the time, he found that the priests and other people had mingled with the people that were already there. Now, a little backing up for history. Remember when, I don't remember, I think it was prior to Nebuchadnezzar, when the Israelites and Jews were taken captive, people from other nations were placed into Jerusalem to take over the city. and they realized that they didn't know the God of Israel. Now, when something belongs to God, it belongs to God, and somebody else comes in and misuses it, it doesn't work the same way. It will not work the same way. That's God's city, God's people, God's temple. So the king then sent back some of the Jews and Israelites to teach the people how to know God. But you can have a knowledge of something without having a connection with it. So that was it. They had a knowledge of God, but they didn't have that spiritual connection with God. So they were still living idolatrous lives. Okay, they were saying God, but they were acting devil. That's it. And I'm sure we've seen that. People say God, but their actions don't show God. And this is what was happening with the priests. And some of the people that were there, they had married women from the pagan tribes and had children with them and had given their daughters to the sons of some of these pagan people. And that was a commandment that was forbidden by God. God said, do not give your sons and daughters to marry these heathen nations, because God knew it was coming. Once they started going in and having those other nations around them, they were going to start forming their ways after. It's such a strange thing. Good rarely brings over evil. Evil pulls good, because you know what? That's our inherent nature to do wrong. We are just inherently wired. Since after Adam and Eve, we have been wired to just do wrong. It is in our nature. We have to choose to do right. But it's natural for us to do wrong. Take a look at a little 2-year-old. Take a look, even before 2 years old, I have looked at children, and they will, you would tell them, don't touch that. And they would creep up to it. Their little hands will move, and they'd be looking at you, but their little hands are moving towards it. What does that? Sometimes we wonder, where did these children get that from? It's inherently there. Okay. So Ezra went into prayer and fasting when he heard what had happened, because the priests are supposed to be those who are taking care of the temple. And if they are not sanctified, there's not going to be any hope for the people. So he went down in sackcloth and ashes, and he pled before God, and he offered up sacrifices on behalf of the people for their sins. And then some of the priests came to him and said, you know what? We have acknowledged our sins, and we know we have done wrong by marrying strange women and having children. We are going to put them away from us. Now, that's a tough thing. I don't know for how long they've had these wives and children, but people form bonds. But like I said yesterday, God before man, anytime, every time. And it's going to be hard for some of us. But I would say in the end, you will always be left with God alone. Many times, man will forsake you. It doesn't matter who it is. And I'm not saying man meaning gender. I'm meaning man, humans. Humans will forsake you. Humans cannot always help you. And if they help you, it's through God's admonishing. A lot of times we put man first. That's wrong. That's erroneous. And some of us have relationships that we find it so hard to give up, even though we know it's killing us spiritually. And this is what these priests, because they were priests, they were the ones who were supposed to go before on behalf of the people. So they asked Ezra for time, because of course they couldn't just, open the door and shove their wives and children out. They had to make preparations for them, and then they would have to go back and perform their priestly vows. So that was given to them, and as I said, sacrifices were made to redeem them, and then we will see what takes place in our next book. So that's the end of our review for today. I think it went on longer than I had planned, but that's it for Ezra. We are finished with the book of Ezra, and until our next reading, let's keep listening, because faith comes when we hear God's word. Take care.